First up, we finally reveal the Discord Comic Club 2026 books that we will be covering next year. So, in February, we will be covering select issues of Batman War Games, specifically following the character arcs for Tim Drake and Stephanie Brown through that storyline, mainly because we can't cover the entire event, too many books, basically, too many comics to cover in a single comic club. But we'll use that as a test ground, potentially to then, in a future year, potentially cover select issues from Batman No Man's Land. In March, I will be hosting, again, with Green Lantern War Journal, Volume 1 Contagion by Philip J. Johnson and Montos. Then in April, we'll have a guest host who will be covering the T-Dragon trilogy by Kay O'Neill. Then in May, there'll be another guest host with Batman City of Madness and also the Nightwing Wolverine story from the DC Marvel Batman Deadpool one-shot, just covering the Nightwing Wolverine story, which is about 6 to 9 pages roughly. So not too much more on top of the 3 issues of Batman City of Madness by Christian Ward. Then in June, I will host again. We're going to have a Nicole Maines themed month with additional extra issues. So we're covering both Nicole Maines' Suicide Squad Dream Team comic, and we'll be covering her Secret Six run as well. So that will be 10 issues in total, 4 for Suicide Squad Dream Team and 6 for the Secret Six series that Nicole did. Then in July, we'll have a guest host hosting Saga Volume 1 by Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan. Then in August, another guest host for Unbeatable Squirrel Girl Volume 1 Squirrel Power by Ryan North and Erica Henderson. Then in September, we'll have another guest host with Once and Future Volume 1 by Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora. Then in October, there'll be a different guest host with The Great British Bump Off by John Allison and Max Sarin, a duo of creatives that we've touched on before, having read both Giant Days and the Harley Quinn Eat Bang Kill Tour. Then in November, I will be back as host for Storm 2024 issues 1 to 5, Volume 1, Earth's Mightiest Mutant by Muriwa Ayodele and Lucas Werneck. And then rounding out 2026 will be Scarlet Witch 2023's run with issues 1 to 5, Volume 1, The Last Door, in December 2026, written by Steve Orlando. An exciting year ahead. Books that I'm hosting over the course of 2026 are 100% locked in, and ones by guest hosts. There's still a little possibility for change depending on what happens with getting drafts in at the end of January, but that update will be given during the February Comic Club if there are any changes required in terms of books or hosts for those months. Tim Drake Robin, 2022 to 2023, issues 1 to 10 by Meghan Fitzmartin. Content warning / trigger warning. There will be mention and discussion of the following: kidnapping, woman being strangled, multiple murders, parental emotional abuse, suicide, cults and suicidal thoughts, ideation, and coercion. Meghan Fitzmartin, she, her, the author of this 10-issue Tim Drake Robin run, originally went to school to be a youth pastor. Meghan says, being from the South, there was very much a mentality of getting a Mrs. degree, basically to find a partner and get married. In the last year of her degree, she reached a crossroads where she could either follow her mental goal of doing youth leadership, married to a pastor, having 2.5 kids and never leaving Florida, or could alter the entire course of her life and move to Los Angeles and do something else. Meghan has no regrets about taking the later option, though admits it was a scary and confusing time in the moment. Meghan Fitzmartin works in TV, animation, comics, and audio. Her comic writing includes Batman Urban Legends stories starring Tim Drake, later collected in the DC Pride Tim Drake special, and the DC Pride The New Generation collected trade. This led into their 10-issue Tim Drake Robin 2022 run. They also wrote Dark Crisis Young Justice and Future State Robin Eternal, a largely non-canon 2-issue Robin story that secured Fitzmartin's employment for the Tim Drake stories we cover tonight. They also wrote Titans Beast World Atlantis, an issue of Detective Comics, and one of the 8 stories in DC Spring Breakout special, where she got to write about the Golden Age era of Teen Titans. Meghan Fitzmartin has worked in DC TV animation, credited as the sole writer of Justice League X Ruby, Superheroes and Huntsman Part 1 and Part 2. They're also credited as co-writer of Justice Society World War II and wrote a couple shorts for DC Superhero Girls. Meghan was a writer's assistant for Supernatural from Season 12, with co-writing credit on a Season 14 episode and sole writing credit on a Season 15 episode. One of the first comics Meghan Fitzmartin read in their youth was Green Arrow Volume 3's Onomatopoeia arc, written by Kevin Smith, and Meghan, growing up in a Republican household, believing they were a Republican at the time and working out what they believed in, found reading about a liberal hero that sticks up for the poor and disenfranchised eye-opening. In 2025, Meghan's currently working on Boom's Box's Mary Sue series with artist Lisa Sterl, with the premise being about a student who writes about her original character, a hot vampire, to put in fanfics about her favorite fictional show, Riverview, very legally distinct from Archie's Riverdale, of course. Her best friend finds it and reads it out aloud to their classmates, and her very own Mary Sue pops out of the fanfic to try and save the day, but may make the lead character's life much worse. Mary Sue, for those unaware, is a derogatory term used to describe female characters that are competent at anything they try. Meghan Fitzmartin has also worked this year on adapting Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's All-Star Superman comic run, a huge inspiration for the 2025 Superman movie, into a script for a full-cast audio adaptation for Penguin's Random House Audio. Fitzmartin, when interviewed, said, "Adapting the visual elements is my favorite kind of challenge, creating an auditory language to translate the comic's breathtaking art. I ended up writing a key for sound motifs, like Superman's flying, heat vision, or superhearing abilities, and a key for music motifs like Krypton, hopeful, or ominous, to help create a consistent mental image." Meghan Fitzmartin has read Batman War Games, Gail Simone's Birds of Prey, and Identity Crisis for her podcast, Wine and Comics, and Barbara Gordon is her favorite member of the Bat family. She especially loves Gail Simone's Batgirl run. She also considers Stephanie Brown an underappreciated member of the Bat family. To the Robin chart, chums! So, as the briefest recap of the Robins, the first Robin, Dick Grayson, he/him, had a falling out with Batman and became Nightwing to mature outside of Batman's shadow. Nightwing and Batman are back on good terms. Nightwing is in a relationship with Barbara Gordon, she/her, also known as the second Batgirl or Oracle, and Dick has the most optimistic personality and is the most proficient gymnast of the Robins. The second Robin, Jason Todd, he/him, has anger issues, was crowbarred and blown up by the Joker, then was resurrected many years later and became Red Hood. The fourth Robin is Stephanie Brown, she/her. The fifth is Damian Wayne, he/him, biological child of Batman and Talia al Ghul, raised with the League of Assassins for his early years. There were also numerous Robin impersonators in a comic called We Are Robin. We Are Robin was a youth movement in Gotham City after the apparent death of Batman during the events of Joker's Endgame, a Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo Batman comic arc in their 2011 run, which started with Court of Owls, covered by the Eto comic cast. The fear of a Batmanless Gotham drove a multitude of Gotham City's teenagers to adopt the signage of his most legendary partner Robin and form We Are Robin, a vigilante army that would fight for the city. Most famous of these teens was Duke Thomas, he/him, who would go on to become the Signal in a yellow with black highlights bat-themed suit, but Darcy Thomas, she/her, was apparently also a member of We Are Robin, although off-screen in all 12 issues of that We Are Robin series. And doesn't look to have appeared on panel at all during those issues. So this comic where she's taken up the mantle, Sparrow, is the first time the character has been given a sizable appearance in continuity. Tim Drake. Originally published in 1989, A Lonely Place to Die, written by Marv Wolfman, he/him, with illustrations by the late George Perez, he/him, and Jim Aparo, he/him, collects Tim Drake's 5-issue journey to becoming the new and best Robin in the Batman and New Titans comics. In that arc, Batman has become reckless following the death of Jason Todd, and Dick Grayson has become co-owner of Haley Circus, where Dick's parents once performed prior to their death. Dick is approached by Tim Drake, a teenager who has been a longtime fan of Dick since he performed as the Flying Graysons. Tim has deduced the whole truth about Batman and Robin, seeing similarities in the acrobatic movesets of Dick Grayson and Nightwing. Dick refuses to entertain Tim's thoughts that Batman needs Dick to fight alongside him as Robin. Dick instead fights as Nightwing alongside Batman, and the two fall into a trap set by the villain Two-Face. Tim Drake and Alfred, he/him, know that the heroes are in danger and go to assist them. Tim Drake chooses to take the Robin suit with him, and he wears it when the time comes to confront Two-Face. The villain manages to escape, but Tim saves Batman and Nightwing. Batman is not pleased with Tim becoming Robin, but with Two-Face on the loose, Batman focuses on capturing the criminal. Batman, Nightwing, and Tim locate and capture Two-Face, thanks to Tim's quick thinking. Batman acquiesces and trains Tim, rating him to become the third Robin. Tim is the only Robin to have ever worked out Batman's secret identity using deductive skills. Tim is also the only holder of the mantle to have taken it up, not because they wanted to be Robin, but because in Tim's mind, Batman needs a Robin to balance them out and for Batman to be their best. Following that story, originally published in 1990, Batman Detective Comics arc Rite of Passage, starting in Detective Comics issue 618, saw a voodoo cult kidnap Tim's parents, Janet and Jack Drake, while they're on a Caribbean cruise holding them hostage for money, until the Batman comes to save them. While Batman arrests the cult, Jack and Janet were poisoned when they drank some of the cult leader's water. Tim's mum died instantly while Jack Drake was left in a coma. Jack Drake would eventually wake up during the ongoing Robin series that started in 1993, throwing multiple spanners in the works for Tim's vigilante life, which included disrupting Tim's residential difficult situation living at Wayne Manor with Bruce and Alfred. Jack Drake would survive well into the ongoing Robin series run, until the events of 2004's Identity Crisis event, a canon piece of Tim's backstory that is brought across into the post-2016 continuity, and will be covered in the first 2026 Comic Club. It's worth noting that Tim, having a parent that was alive when he first became Robin, who was an active part of his life when not comatose, is a large cornerstone of what helped set Tim Drake apart from the other mostly orphaned Robins. You see the balance of Tim trying to be a vigilante while keeping the rest of his life together and feeling guilt at not telling his father. Jack Drake does genuinely try to be a good parent to Tim, being suspect of the interest Bruce Wayne, a rich, wealthy man, has taken in his teenage son, alarmed at injuries from Robin fights that Tim sports, and trying any number of things to improve Tim's life in a really upper middle class kind of way, like sending Tim to boarding school at one point. You see his father finding out eventually about Tim's alter ego, and horrified at the violent, dangerous situations that puts Tim in, made Tim quit being Robin, a decision that would lead Tim's girlfriend at the time, Stephanie Brown, aka the Spoiler, to put on the Robin costume. You see Jack come to a place of acceptance and pride with Tim, being Robin when Gotham is besieged by a gang war, which forces Tim to put the costume back on. The loss of Jack Drake was heartbreaking. In the comics, you barely get any time with Tim getting to be in that place as Robin with his father's acceptance before it's ripped away. Add to that, within 12 months of real-world time of his father dying, at most weeks comic book time. They also kill his girlfriend Stephanie Brown, they kill his best friend Connor Kent, aka Superboy, and he has a classmate whom he tries to save as a civilian die in his arms during a school shooting, simultaneously isolating and traumatizing the character of Tim Drake. What makes Tim Drake unique as Robin is his proficiency as a detective and computer specialist, being better than the other Robins. He's the most selfless, taking on the Robin mantle not because Tim wanted to, but because he saw how much Batman needed Robin. He's the nerdiest Robin, who's into computer games, D&D, and skating. Tim's intellect is most accurately expressed as being an efficient strategist who is good at piecing things together and forward planning. Tim's also socially a very personable person that makes friends quickly. To Nightwing, he is a brother. He's one of Cassandra Cain's Batgirl's closest friends, while Batman doesn't pick favorite Robins, some of Batman's actions, including one in today's comic book club, speak pretty loudly that Tim is a contender for the title of favorite Robin. Riley Rossmo, main artist for issues 1 to 6 of Tim Drake Robin 2022. Riley Rossmo is a Canadian comic book artist and illustrator, known for his work on various Image comic titles as well as Marvel Comics' Daken Dark Wolverine. Now I'm going to say my opinion once, so it's out of the way, then move on. Riley Rossmo is an artist with a specific art style best suited to specific types of comics, and DC Editorial, in my opinion, did Rossmo a massive disservice allocating them to this specific book with this character. Rossmo worked on the first 19 issues of the 2021 Harley Quinn series, the fourth volume for those keeping track, and did art for the 2019 Martian Manhunter Volume 4 series, and contributed variant covers to recent Absolute Martian Manhunter miniseries. These are solo books with characters where Rossmo can flourish. Harley's world, as seen through her eyes, can be portrayed as wacky as possible, and the jellybean heads and unique, slightly inhuman proportions suit the character's imagination applied as a lens cap over what the comic reader observes, and Martian Manhunter is a shapeshifter with a design that can lend itself to almost any hyper-stylized art style, especially those like Rossmo's that can give characters a slightly surreal quality. Tim Drake, off the heels of his story in the DC Pride 2022 anthology issue and the DC Pride Tim Drake special, collecting the Batman Urban Legends anthology stories covering Tim's bisexual acceptance and coming out, plus an additional bonus story, set Bernard and Tim up as a very quickly put together couple whose romance desperately needed fleshing out and needing additional characterization in Bernard's case. But ultimately, the core dynamic was a youngish, two men in love story, and the sort of style that I reckon was needed was one that would showcase the cuteness and cuddliness and comfort of the new couple, with an art style preferencing soft rounded edges and wide open eyes drawn similar to Heartstopper, but perhaps with the bright color and level of warm cute detail as seen in Ngozi Ukazu's Check Please that would be usefully adapted for the more noir detective superhero plots. And that's just not what Rossmo's particular art style is suited to evoking. DC Editorial didn't put Rossmo on a book where they were being given the characters they were likely to succeed with. There are panels in isolation throughout this run where Rossmo finds a way to make their art style, especially in the scenery backgrounds of panels or to detective elements that I could enjoy, but I definitely felt a building frustration where I was reading these for the first time month to month at the character artwork for what it wasn't made to convey rather than what it actually achieved, delivering zaniness and unease when moments required seriousness or comfort instead. By the time Rossmo was relocated to a book where their art got to thrive again, the Wesley Dodds The Sandman 6-part miniseries, the DC Editorial's mistakes damage was done. Sales for issue 5 clunking along the bottom of the top 200 comic sales each month, not where a successful Bat Family book is meant to be ranked. People didn't return or bother to notice the artists who worked on the back half of the series, which is devastating to me because my favorite art in the series, and hence my favorite issue, should be read by everyone. Which brings me to Serg Acuna, the artist for Tim Drake Robin issue 7. Serg Acuna, he, him, is a comic book artist from Costa Rica. Serg hasn't done many interviews yet, but I avidly follow their Instagram and adore their work. I own an unreasonable number of their Tom Taylor era Nightwing variant covers and Kelly Thompson era Birds of Prey variant covers. They've also done variant covers for Catwoman, the Multiversus game tie-in comics, Dark Crisis Young Justice, Ark World's Blood of Atlantis, Blue Beetle's Graduation Day, and have been one of the few artists to continue sporadically doing Nightwing variant covers into the Dan Watters and Dexter Soy era of Nightwing. Serg also did in-book backup story art for Nightwing issues 106 through 108, did in-book art for stories in the anthology Stories books Batman Urban Legends, DC Power 2024, and DC's Lex and the City. He also did the penciling and inking in Aquaman The Becoming issue 6, Poison Ivy issue 14, and various The Flash issues, both in the ongoing series and the recent Jay Garrick miniseries. They also did the limited edition cover for Tom King's Wonder Woman issue 22, and Serg also did in-book artwork on Titans issue 19 with John Layman. In 2019, Serg teamed up with Dan Mora and Jordi Belair to art Frenemies, a short story for the Buffy the Vampire Slayer series for Free Comic Book Day. They also did art for Scout Comics 4-issue miniseries called Darkland. Serg Acuna has contributed artwork to an Atomic Mass Games X-Men themed board game and worked on Boom and DC's wrestling comics. Serg also worked with Omar Morales and Mao Mora on the first act of a sci-fi adventure graphic novel, Major Thomas, through Comixology Originals. They've also recently done artwork on Strange New Worlds, Star Trek, The Seeds of Salvation, issues 3 through 5 for IDW, and have started doing variant covers for DC's Green Lantern Corps series. If you aren't following them on Instagram or other social media platforms, please fix this ASAP. They still do fan art as well as commissions, and their takes on Daredevil, One Piece, Batman, and other characters is phenomenal. I crammed as many of their artworks as I could on this page, and there were so many great ones I had to leave off. I could gush over Serg's artwork forever. I need Serg to start doing ongoing books on a consistent basis, not only because it'll work out cheaper for my wallet than picking up variant covers, haha, but because I want to see more of Serg Acuna's artwork every single month, guaranteed. Recently in Tim Drake's life, in 1991, DC commissioned the Robin miniseries starring Tim Drake, the first time in DC publication history that any variation of the Robin character had been spotlighted in their own comic title. Also notable, Tim Drake is the first Robin with a costume unlike those worn by his predecessors, with full green pant legs. Tim Drake was trained by Lady Shiva, known in the DC universe as possibly the world's greatest martial artist, a ruthless killer, and the mother of Cassandra Cain, in both martial arts and the use of the bow staff. Tim customized his bow staff using his brains to thwart the villain King Snake. Other important events that occur to Tim Drake include on and off dating Stephanie Brown, who usually goes by the codenames The Spoiler or Batgirl, and Tim being adopted by Batman after the demise of Jack Drake, though it took a while for Tim to reach a place of being emotionally healed enough to agree to that adoption. Following Final Crisis, Tim took Bruce's last name to represent his adopted father's legacy, as Bruce was presumed dead. You'll notice a recurring theme in Batman's comics of Bruce and or Batman disappearing and being presumed dead. Stephanie Brown and Tim Drake broke up off-panel between the end of Tinian's Detective Comics run and the Batman Urban Legends stories that involved Tim coming out as bisexual, a move that deeply frustrated fans of both characters. Hopefully a writer one day will revisit that time period to fill in that glaring blank and detail Tim's internal thought process in the lead-up to that breakup. Bruce's adoption of Tim also caused some discomfort for Tim when Damian Wayne arrived on the scene. Damian, raised by assassins, believed as the biological child he had to murder all the adoptive children to claim his birthright, so Damian's initial encounters with Tim resulted in a lot of injuries for Tim. People gave Tim flack for disliking Damian, but I don't know about you. I don't care how young someone is. If they're trying to stab me, blow me up, or drop me off the head of a dinosaur to murder me, I'm not likely to want to befriend them. In recent years, as Damian has matured away from the League of Assassins mindset, Tim and Damian have reached a more copacetic dynamic, though I still don't believe Tim would volunteer willingly to spend additional time with Damian. During James Tinian's Detective Comics run in 2016, Tim had gotten into Ivy universities and faced whether that's what he wanted to do. Tim ultimately decided, I don't think so. Therefore, going into this arc, Meghan Fitzmartin wanted to honor that by having Tim being drawn to Gotham and not thinking university is the right course for him at this particular moment, while leaving the door open for this to be a gap year while he figures out his next steps. We have previously read stories with Tim Drake's Robin for Comic Club, most notably in February 2024 when we covered Robin 2, Joker's Wild, the first time that the Tim Drake Robin encountered the Joker. Knowing the last time Joker ran into a Robin, then Jason Todd, it had resulted in that Robin's death during Death in the Family. In September 2023, for Comic Club, we covered DC Pride 2022, The New Generation. The hardcover, including DC Pride, Tim Drake Special Number 1, collating Tim's stories from Batman Urban Legends issues 4, 5, 6, and 10, in addition to original stories. Relevant to this month's comic, there was a 3-part story called Some of Our Parts, in which Tim goes on a date with Bernard, a former classmate, who first appeared in Robin issue 121. The original characterization of the character was largely a womanizing conspiracy theory, spurting self-proclaimed cool everyman who befriends Tim. So much of the recharacterization in this post-rebirth era is actually for the better, even if the character has less edge now that his original than his original characterization had. During dinner, Bernard is temporarily kidnapped by the cult Children of Dionysus, who take on the mantle of the Chaos Monster. Robin frees Bernard, the two fight off the cult members back to back, and save the cult's other kidnapped children. The two agree to officially start dating. There was a story called The Elephant in the Room, where Tim Drake, Cassandra Cain's Batgirl, Stephanie Brown's Batgirl, and Tim's former Young Justice friends Connor Kent Superboy and Bart Allen Impulse team up, taking down a rampaging white ghost elephant rampaging through town, the elephant a reference to a Mark Twain book. The culprit of who created the elephant was not revealed before this comic run. We're discussing tonight. Tim and Stephanie reconcile as friends post-breakup, and Steph is ecstatic to be introduced to Bernard, Tim's special friend that he's dating. Most recently, Batman had been spooked by an injury Tim sustained in Chip Zdarsky's failsafe arc in Batman issue 125, published in mid-2022, where Tim is shot through a neck artery by one of Penguin's goons. Batman obviously recalls memories of Jason Todd dying in Death in the Family, but he's also seen Tim Drake die before in the 2016 Detective Comics Rebirth run by James Tynion IV. That death didn't stick due to the really complicated storyline that crossed over with the Watchmen universe. Tim Drake and Bernard Dowd's first kiss on panel is in The Toy Box from Batman issue 132 by Chip Zdarsky and Miguel Mendonca. Tim Drake Robin 2022, issue 1. Tim Drake moved to the Gotham City Marina 6 weeks ago to figure himself out away from his family. The marina is being threatened with development and gentrification to push out less wealthy citizens. While Tim Drake has a meal with the boy he's been dating for 6 months, Bernard spouts off a theory that Batman is a demigod/demogorgon hybrid, conspiracy theorizing having been one of the 2 defining characteristics the character had prior to the 2011 DC Universe reboot. Tim is unsure if he and Bernard are officially boyfriends and doesn't want to put pressure on Bernard by revealing Tim's dual identity, giving Bernard still mentally recovering from being kidnapped by a cult. Tim does know that Bernard brings out the real Tim, making him feel like there's more to him than he's previously settled for. Afterwards, Tim meets up with Darcy Thomas, aka Sparrow. Tim's marina neighbors, Cam and Mia Espanier, are found murdered, Cam beheaded, and Tim calls in Detective Williams, a Meghan Fitzmartin and Belen Ortega creation, who appeared during the Bernard Dowd kidnapping story in the Sum of Our Parts story arc. Detective Williams is one of the few Gotham police without an outright hate-on for the Bat family. The Murders in the Rue Morgue, the very first detective story written by Edgar Allan Poe and inspiration for Sherlock Holmes, allows Tim to predict the arrival of a glowing orangutan similar to the white glowing elephant he encountered in the Elephant in the Room story. The elephant was defeated by breaking a white enamel disc nearby. When this is repeated here, the orangutan instead gets mad. Tim destroys the ape with a razor. Tim goes back to the boat with Sparrow, where a parcel from the glowing animal creator is waiting, suggesting they know Tim Drake is the Robin of their case, and alarming that somebody got past Tim's elaborate security system undetected. Tim Drake Robin 2022, issue 2. After Robin gets framed for a diamond gem heist, Sparrow and Robin research the library only for the librarian to be murdered behind their back. Robin, knowing the Mysterious Villain loves mystery novels, figures out they've set up a mystery similar to 1868's The Moonstone. Robin also somehow works out that the boy who talks to him at the soup kitchen is working for the baddie. I couldn't figure out the connective tissue personally of how Tim made that mental leap and connection, that the kid was up to anything nefarious any more than anybody else in the soup kitchen. The kid doesn't know the baddie's identity, though. Meanwhile, the marina people receives notices of eviction, and Tim feels guilty over not being fully transparent with Bernard. The issue ends with the baddie in shadows, sicking Robins resembling Dick, Stephanie, and Damien upon Tim Drake, but also uncharacteristically wielding guns while they do so. I picked up the Dan Mora variant cover, which is an homage to 1940s Detective Comics issue 38, which featured the introduction of Dick Grayson as Robin the Boy Wonder. You might be wondering, why move Tim to a marina? This was done because Meghan Fitzmartin lives in a marina on the London Thames River, where there is a sense of community and many strange individuals. Thoughts for issues 1 and 2. Jade's thoughts. Jade was reading a physical copy of the Tim Drake Robin Mystery at the Marina trade paperback and realized she recognized the first story. The Elephant in the Room was included in the DC Pride, the New Generation anthology. This serves as a reintroduction to key characters. Jade definitely needs reminders and introduces a mystery involving a phantom elephant from a Mark Twain story. Jade was glad that she was primed by the elephant story, as it put her in the right headspace to understand the villain's modus operandi. Jade has read The Murders in the Rue Morgue and was pleasantly surprised to be reminded of it. Also, it's neat to see Tim putting clues together. Unfortunately, it's not clear to Jade why there are a few moments of sign language in issue 1. Presumably there's a deaf or hard of hearing character. Joshy note, it's inconsistently drawn, but Darcy Thomas, aka Sparrow, is hard of hearing and inserted panels can be seen with a hearing aid. Joshy Q. Also, never mind. Anyway, Laughing Seal's thoughts. Seal loved the introduction of the ragtag group living on the marina. He immediately recognized Riley Rossmo's art, which he knew previously from their work on Harley Quinn. He wasn't sure how to feel about it here, as he loves the quirkiness it lends to the story, but Tim himself felt homogenized in his appearance. Something about the hair being flattened into a Lego-like clip in circle felt like he lost his visual identity separate to the other Robins. Bernard feels similarly homogenized. Laughing Seal was not particularly thrilled about the return of the transparent literary references. It felt much more on the nose for a Bat Family story than he liked, but it was still enjoyable for him nonetheless. Ammo's thoughts. Ammo is a big fan of a good murder mystery, and this story has plenty of the classic tropes. Aside from a frustrating lack of credible suspects, the setting of the Gotham Arena is well established, as well as the colourful cast of misfits who reside there. Ammo struggled to get invested in Tim's relationship with Bernard, though, as at this point in the story, in Ammo's opinion, Bernard feels a little one-dimensional. Sparrow Darcy is a fun psychic, though. She has a good bit of back and forth with Detective Williams that endeared her to Ammo. Joshy's thoughts. I've read opinions that Sparrow was randomly picked as a replacement for Stephanie Brown because of the Batgirls book, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Tim's closeness to Sparrow feels really dropped in our laps as a fan of Tim Drake's. I was able to roll with it with a shrug, and with later events that happened to Sparrow, I'm kind of okay that it wasn't Stephanie in the scenario. That said, I don't know if much more will be seen of Darcy after this Robin run. She hasn't been seen in anything in the 2 years since the book finished. I thought the panel with Robin typing on the computer and the sound description words being type was hilarious. Syntax encountered some difficulties with the art. They felt the art style meant you lose the intention to read the character's intentions and body language. They're hard to read in a way that works for Harley, who can be a different mood in any moment, less so for Robin. Coastal thoughts. There's a level of sophistication to the Batfam characters, and found the beautiful but contextually incorrect with its roughness jarring, which is why they fell off purchasing the comics monthly for this Tim Drake Robin run in relation to the artwork. Tim Drake Robin 2022 issue 3. I purchased both the Todd Nork and Dan Mora variant covers of this issue. Facsimile Robins of Dick, Jason, Stephanie, and Damien attacked him with guns and knives. Tim manages to defeat the clay-like versions of Dick, Stephanie, and Damien, although Damien does slash one of Tim's arms in the process as Tim defends the residents of the marina, the 3 defeated Robins melting once the police arrive on the scene. The facsimile Jason searches out a Colonel Moran elsewhere in the marina and talks to the boss, who oddly resembles Clayface. The older balding man called Colonel Moran is a reference to Colonel Sebastian Moran, an Arthur Conan Doyle creation, an enemy of Sherlock Holmes, first appearing in the 1903 short story The Adventure of the Empty House. Holmes once described Moran as the second most dangerous man in London, the most dangerous being Professor Moriarty, Moran's employer. An injured Tim Drake Robin runs into Bernard, who remembers Robin, who saved him from the cult, and doesn't know that Tim and Robin are one and the same, so takes Robin back to Tim's boat that looks like a murder shack to lie low from the police and treat his wounds. Bernard thanks Robin for rescuing him from the Chaos Monster cult, explaining that while he had accepted himself, not everybody had, foreshadowing issue 7 with Bernard's parents. Bernard just wanted to take the easy offer of the cult to escape. Bernard also tells Robin that he's worried about his boyfriend Tim because his conspiracy theory-loving gut is telling him it's more than what Tim's saying. Bernard wants to be there for Tim, but Tim will sacrifice himself for others before looking at what's in front of him. Bernard heads off as he has early morning classes somewhere, handing Robin a note to leave for Tim in the boat to call Bernard. Before decomposing, Clay Dick mentioned Robin already having all the clues from 3 different detective stories needed to solve the case. Tim Drake Robin 2022 issue 4. I opted for the Dan Mora variant cover for this issue. I wanted the Edwin Gellman cover, but it was too rare and expensive to get out in Australia. Tim's encounter with his nosy landlord James leads him to uncover a pivotal clue in his investigation, that the printout contains a cipher. While he mulls over the information, he is met by Bernard. The two then have a discussion with community members, highlighting how gentrification is slowly leaving members of the marina unemployed, which will force them to move out of the marina faster. Tim discovers 4 books are missing from his book collection, Googles the books, and locates the pages which provide him with the words to decipher the cryptic cipher. After Bernard heads home, Robin recruits backup, the Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown Batgirls, and the trio go out in search of a killer. For more comprehensive bios on these 2 Batgirls, I would advise consulting the YouTube upload of the Batgirls Comic Club. As a basic rundown, Cass Cain is the 3rd Batgirl, raised by an assassin father. Cassandra Cain was not taught spoken language, the speech parts of her brain instead taught to read physical movement and body language to such a proficient degree that Cass could predict with uncanny accuracy the next fight move of any combatant. Cass rebelled against her father's abusive tendencies and desire to kill, instead defecting to the Bat Fam. Exposure to the Bat Fam has expanded Cass's spoken vocabulary and allowed monumental personal growth. Stephanie Brown is the 4th Batgirl, daughter of third-rate villain the Clue Master and an overworked nurse for a mother, is very talkative, can be impulsive at times, and is the weakest fighter in the Bat Fam, but has a heart determination that makes her invaluable. Steph and Cass are besties. Soon the trio arrive at a crime scene to find themselves in immediate danger with another giant animal, a goldfish that more closely resembles a shark as it flies through the air, snapping at the trio. The creature is a reference to Goldfish by Raymond Chandler, about a man that steals pearls and hides them in a goldfish, and Robin deduces that the white disc generating the creature is inside it. Using some quickly calculated physics, Robin retrieves the disc and dismantles the creature, avoiding the monster's teeth as he swallowed. Afterwards, Robin learns Bernard has been kidnapped by the villain wearing a self-described dapper costume, who wants to be the best villain Gotham has ever seen. Thoughts for Tim Drake Robin 2022 issues 3 and 4. Jade's thoughts. Jade appreciates a villain or writer who helps the audience remember who all their bat people are and how different they are. Jade also enjoys when superheroes have to interact with their loved ones who don't know about their alter egos. One of the more entertaining ethical quandaries. Joshy's thoughts. While I think Riley Rossmo is a poor fit for a Tim Drake comic, a Cass Cain comic, on the other hand, especially a run where she's mostly masked, could work. I think that's because in Cass's Batgirl series in the 2000s, see the purple circle on the right of the slide as an example, artists including Damian Scott, Adrian Sabar, and Rick Leonardi drew Batgirl in a round-headed way that is super expressive, especially through the full face covering mask, with the material contorting over the facial features. I think Rossmo's art style is reminiscent of this, especially in panels where Cass is eating on the bike, or the random panel where Batgirl is shocked to be handed a baby. On a different note, I have never related to Tim more than when he says it's hard moving his books between places without other stuff going wrong. Moving books is tiring and expensive. Worth it for how great they look on your walls and how awesome it is to have 1,000 stories at your fingertips, but tiring. While I'll agree with Fitzmartin's assessment of Stephanie being impulsive, I'll disagree with Stephanie being a hot-headed character. While I'd associate the characteristic with Damian, I'd also more associate that characteristic with Jason of the Robins there. The interaction between Robin and Bernard on Tim's boat was fascinating. The suit feeling too tight, like it doesn't fit, sounds like anxiety that could have manifested in a panic attack. It's also a manifestation of an identity not feeling right. There was a similar theme in Some of Our Parts where Tim goes on that initial date with Bernard and he's wearing Dixol clothes from an emergency stash in a micro Batcave, and they also do not fit right. Tim hasn't found a skin he's fully comfortable in. Ammo's thoughts. Tim fighting all the doppelgangers of all the other Robins was a fun way of exploring the character's history. Ammo also enjoyed the time spent with the 2 Batgirls. The reveal at the end of issue 4 that a serial killer has kidnapped Bernard was a tiresome one, though. Ammo feels like they've read 100 or so comics where the love interest becomes a damsel in distress, or in this case, a dude in distress, and our hero has to swoop in and save them. Laughing Seal's thoughts. Seal enjoyed the multi-Robin fight. It felt like the landlord came out of nowhere, but turns out that was the point in the end. Joshy note, I will mention that the landlord was referenced back in issue 1, I believe. To me, it also feels like a constant situation of marina residents being in each other's business, and you can't go anywhere in the marina without running into somebody, which sounds like a personal nightmare in my mind. I want quiet and solitude with zero neighbor interaction. Coastal thought. The art style works really well in fight scenes because it has this great bendy / sort of movement feel to it. Tim Drake Robin, 2022, issue 5. Riley Rossmo does the art on pages 1 to 5 and page 22. Ricardo Lopez Ortiz arts the remaining in-book pages and the original cover. I'm also going to quickly point out the variant cover by Nick Robles, which I not only own a copy of, you may recognize the name from last month's Christopher Chaos Comic Club. He was the cover artist and initial character designer for the book. The issue starts with Tim searching for his boyfriend Bernard, who has gone missing. He calls for the assistance of Nightwing, Batwoman, and Sparrow in his frantic search while doubting if he's really ready to go out on his own, full of self-doubt and imposter syndrome. Nightwing reassures him that starting a new phase of life is scary, but it's always worth it, referencing back to when Nightwing first moved to Bloodhaven to establish himself outside of Gotham. A brief Batwoman bio. So we're going to skip over the original pre-1985 version of Batwoman, Kathy Kane. We've covered her back in the DC Pride 2022 Comic Club, recording on YouTube, how Batwoman was created from a place of homophobia because Batman and Robin decorating their home with too many vases, apparently. This version of Batwoman, Kate Kane, was introduced in 2006 in DC's 52 series as a proud and out lesbian, initially dating Renee Montoya, though broke up with Renee for being too closeted in her lesbianism. The outfit design was originally intended for a return of Barbara Gordon to Cape Crusading, but was rebuffed because of how little representation there was for disabled people in DC superhero comics at the time. Oh, the irony that hindsight gives us. Many have asserted that Batwoman will be the highest profile gay superhero to ever grace the pages of DC Comics, though those claims have lessened since Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, John Kent, and Catwoman have all sat in the queer anti-heroes space. This Kate Kane Batwoman has had a number of solo series starting in 2010. Kate Kane is depicted as a Jewish military brat, one of the twin daughters of Jacob Kane, brother of Martha Wayne, making her Bruce Wayne's cousin, who grew up with a close relationship with her parents and twin Beth. On Kate and Beth's 12th birthday, the twins, alongside their mother, were abducted, and although her father assembled a team to rescue them, Kate's mother and seemingly Beth were killed. Raised by Jacob, a single father who inspired her to join the United States Army, she was later kicked out of the military academy despite exceeding standards as a cadet due to her being gay, which is very much an actual thing. Look at the don't ask, don't tell policy that infamously existed for decades, preceded by even more heinous institutional homophobia prior to that. The experience caused her to spiral into depression, and she began excessively partying and frequently having one-night stands. Kate is nearly mugged and saved by Batman, becoming inspired to become the vigilante Batwoman with an extensive support training from Jacob Kane. Her deceased sister, Beth Kane, pops up as a mentally unstable villain called Red Alice, and her dad, Jacob, has also done some suspect stuff, which was semi-adapted for the Gotham Knights video game, but we won't get into that today for time. When Tim Drake finds Bernard tied up at the docks after a cut-off comms message from Sparrow, who is nowhere to be found, Tim is knocked unconscious and wakes up inverted and tied up to Bernard, acting out of character and declaring he's been the mastermind all along. Eliminating the impossible, Tim decides whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth, and the package showing up on his boat, despite Tim's security system, suggests the villain has been spying on Tim as his landlord James. The villain started out as a goon who, after being locked up, met somebody who told the villain he could be more than just a goon, he just needed a hero to face and spar with. When Robin solved the Mark Twain story back in the DC Pride 2022 story, The Elephant in the Room, the villain picked Robin to be the metaphoric Batman to his Joker. Tim works out the alchemist symbols on the disc are what's holding together the bodies of the creatures. Tim counters the salt-based creatures with various acids in the marina, including his own vomit. Bernard is shown chained up somewhere else in the marina, inside a pentagram with a skull-shaped bomb, with a 2-minute timer ticking down. Tim Drake Robin, issue 6 of the 2022 run. Issue 6 was the final issue of Tim Drake Robin that Riley Rossmo contributed artwork towards. Ricardo Lopez Ortiz does the artwork for the cover, which is notable for being one of the few comic covers to feature two men locking lips with full lip contact. We've discussed in previous comic clubs in more depth how, even after the Comic Code Authority was abandoned, there have been countless covers featuring cis-hetero couples fully snogging, but seldom few with LGBTQIA+ couples snogging on the front cover, and only a small proportion of those covers feature two men. You'll notice, for example, there's not a single John Kent Superman cover with John making actual lip contact on the front cover with Jay. Sex sells unless it's non-hetero sex featuring masculine characters, then keep it off the covers so it's not kept off shelves in conservative states, apparently. 60 years ago, Marvel was doing the same thing with Black Panther, sticking him in a full-face mask to avoid racists pulling the books off the shelves. Anyway, I own this cover and I adore it. I love especially the detail of the drawn-in lens flare circles. The villain who's been plaguing Tim Drake Robin is calling himself Moriarty, a new Gotham villain who uses alchemy to create monsters and change his appearance. Moriarty's whole body was some sort of alchemical reactor, and Robin reasons alchemy was used to summon the ghostly apparitions. Robin also reasons Moriarty must have gotten some of Clayface's living clay substances illegally. Multiple residents of the marina, Detective Williams and Sparrow, are all captured and tied up. Also, interestingly, Tim still can't bring himself in his own internal thoughts bubbles to call Bernard his boyfriend until they have the final convo in the marina pier. Tim likes solving puzzles and having control, and so much of his life has felt like nothing has been controlled. With the death of his parents, Bruce Wayne, Connor Kent, and Stephanie, though Bruce, Connor, and Stephanie's deaths were all eventually undone. Tim's always been drawn to people who are unapologetically themselves, but has never been able to solve the puzzle of who he is. He used to dream of being Batman at one point, but lately has been dreaming of something new, less structured, less careful. As Moriarty, shapeshifted to appear like knockoff Batman, fights Robin, Tim notices that Sparrow and another woman are being held hostage nearby. He wraps his adversary in ropes and rips off his mask. Detective Williams, who is nearby, joins the others. Robin contends with an angered, formless Moriarty, while the others search for the bomb. Robin is able to force Moriarty off the pier into the harbour, locates Bernard with Sparrow accompanying him, and Robin defuses the bomb with a second to spare. Later, the characters debrief. They could not find Moriarty, but Robin explained to everyone what was happening with the alchemist symbols on the discs. While this conversation is happening, we find that someone, probably Colonel Moran, had found Moriarty and got him out of the area. A week later, Tim and Bernard are chatting. The marina has returned to normal as the marina can get. Tim asks Bernard if they are boyfriends. Bernard tells him that is what he is calling Tim, and the two kiss. The issue also drops references to previous Comic Club comic Robin 2 Joker's Wild when Tim's thinking about Jason. Thoughts for Tim Drake Robin 2022 issues 5 and 6. Jade thoughts. Issue 5 has been illustrated by two different artists, depending on the page. Jade normally doesn't mind artist changes between issues, but flipping between artists twice in one issue for the same story was a bit jarring. Jade did not work out who the culprit was, and so she didn't the Pikachu gasp face when Bernard apparently did it, although Tim worked out the truth reasonably quickly. Laughing Shield thoughts. Shield thought it was the fight against all the clay monsters was great, and thought the solutions was genuinely quite clever, though he would not recommend forcing yourself to vomit with the same fingers you just used to uncap and pour some battery acid. Moriarty really feels the seal like that one annoying online troll who just wants to elicit a reaction from one user and just won't stop. Overall, issue 6 felt the seal like it was a very by the numbers for one of those solo runs. Fight the insecurity personified, reclaim an identity of your own, think you killed the big bad but didn't, save the close confidant with the skin of your teeth, and there's even a bomb included for good classic measure. Ammo's thoughts. Ammo didn't really find the conclusion to this mystery to be very satisfying. It was obvious to Ammo that the killer would be Landlord James, because they were the only truly credible suspect introduced to the reader, and Bernard doesn't get to contribute in any way. He doesn't untie himself or help defuse the bomb or anything. Disappointing to see him so completely devoid of agency in this story. Josh's thoughts. Given Bernard contributed the last time he got kidnapped, fighting alongside Tim in the Sum of Our Parts and DC's Pride special in the Tim Drake stories, I was okay with him being a more traditional dude in distress here. It's more realistic that Bernard isn't going to be an active agent every time he gets embroiled in a Robin story. He is just an ordinary citizen at the end of the day, ability-wise. I will say I did pick up that the villain who wanted to be Robin's greatest foe, a title more likely held by King Snake or Ulysses Armstrong, compares himself to the Batman and Joker dynamic, names and motifs himself after an IP character, all these clues are references to historical literary works. His powers are largely copied from other villains. He's essentially a fraud and a copycat that was derivative in every aspect, which feels like very intentional choices on the writer's part. On the other hand, the part of my personality that enjoys Schadenfreude enjoys the idea of that character. On the other hand, does that make for an enticing villain in execution? Possibly for a shorter arc, so the villain can then become a recurring one that builds up over time and becomes an increasing threat, not dissimilar to potentially someone like, say, the Riddler. Tim Drake Robin 2022, Issue 7. The various sections are broken up based on a restaurant menu, designed in such a way that it mimics the couple's dating plan, a clever way to signify the importance of the subsequent events of Bernard's heart. During the aperitif portion of the comic, which means a drink before a meal to stimulate appetite, Tim Drake is rushing to get ready, struggling to change out of his skin-tight Robin costume quickly into civilian clothes. Bernard Dowd, his boyfriend, is waiting. The two have dinner reservations, but it's perilous as Firefly has been attacking restaurants. Bernard is not worried after all, he has Tim with him. Bruce Wayne was able to get the reservations for Tim and Bernard. It's revealed that Bernard's parents could have gotten the reservations for the two of them as well, but they are not as encouraging of Bernard's studies to be a chef, majoring in physics and biology. Bernard's chef-in-training status also explains why an issue largely from Bernard's POV would be structured like a restaurant course menu. As a quick bio of Firefly, Garfield Linz, aka Firefly, first appeared in 1952's Detective Comics issue 184. He's a pyrotechnics expert with a thorough knowledge of flammable agents and explosives who uses a fireproof battle suit equipped with flamethrower, incendiary devices, and a winged jetpack for flight. Initially portrayed as a criminal who utilizes lighting effects to commit robberies, Firefly was later reimagined as a sociopathic pyromaniac with an obsessive compulsion to start fires following Crisis on Infinite Earths reboot of the DC Universe in the 1980s. The Garfield version becomes gradually more deranged, at one point wanting to skin and wear Nightwing's outer epidermis over his own skin. In 1959, a different man called Ted Carson put on a Firefly costume for Batman issue 126. During the New 52 era in the 2011 Batgirl series, the Garfield Linz version is killed by Ted Carson, who takes up the Firefly identity permanently. So I suspect this is the version we're seeing in Tim Drake Robin issue 7. Firefly has appeared in various non-comic media, including the new Batman Adventures in the 90s, Bruce Timm's Justice League, the 2004 The Batman series, Batman the Brave and the Bold. A female version appeared in Gotham, and the Ted Carson version of Firefly was the one set to be portrayed by Brendan Fraser in the unreleased Batgirl movie that was allegedly scrapped for a tax credit. We enter the entree portion of the comic, which in culinary terms means a small quantity of food served as the first portion of the meal. At the restaurant, Bernard is greeted with the unhappy surprise of his parents being at the same restaurant, invited by the chef. Bernard's mum is not approving of Tim, which is evident when she says that he brought his little friend. Tim notices something off-panel and quickly excuses himself. Bernard's mother tells Bernard that she wants him to come back after a terse dialogue exchange. Bernard admits that while he wants to, there are things he needs before he could. Bernard is interrupted from elaborating by an explosion. Firefly is attacking, and Robin quickly swings in to engage, carrying us into the plate principale of the comic, the main plate the whole meal is based around. Bernard tries to get his parents out, but is cut off by the fire. Bernard grabs a tablecloth to cover them, while Robin tries to figure out who Firefly is working with. The Dowds complain and argue the whole time, culminating in Mr. Dowd saying Bernard makes everything about himself, that he could have his old comfortable life back if he just did everything the way his parents wanted, and he ends up yelling at Bernard that it would have been better if he had never been born, managing to even shock Mrs. Dowd. Bernard exits the restaurant by himself, emotionally shattered and alone, describing an emotional state that is fragile, Tim feeling like a life raft among the deep sadness that is the non-Tim parts of his life. In the salad portion of the comic, here representing the dish after the main course that aids digestion, Tim steps out and embraces his boyfriend. Bernard shares the interaction with his parents. Bernard mentions it's like his worst fears coming to life. This sparks a memory in Tim, and he races back to the restaurant, saying he forgot his sweater. Bernard follows, but his parents are still in the restaurant. Through a window, Bernard sees Robin trapped in a fire cage. But there is someone else, Phobia. She is the brains of this operation, feeding off the chaos of the trapped patrons. A brief bio of Phobia. She's a Marv Wolfman and George Perez creation, first appearing in 1981's New Teen Titans issue 14. Born a British aristocrat, Phobia possesses the power to create illusions representing the fear of others, probes psyches, and controls the fear centers of the human mind. She's most frequently opposing the Teen Titans as a member of the Brotherhood of Evil, and later the Injustice League and Cheetah's secret society of supervillains. Bernard sneaks in and discovers his parents' worst nightmare, and it, of course, being self-centered individuals that they are only concerned about how things affect them. The greatest fear doesn't involve Bernard at all. They are arguing in the middle of the inferno about getting a divorce. Just then, Firefly and Phobia find Bernard and grab him in front of Robin. Robin escapes and takes out both Firefly and Phobia. After putting out the fire, Robin leaves them for the police. Afterward, in the dessert portion of the comic, here labeled the best part of the meal, Tim and Bernard walk home. Tim asks if Bernard is safe, and Bernard tells him that he is always safe with him. The two share a touching moment, and then Bernard asks him if he got his sweater. Tim says that he forgot that he did not have one with him, and Bernard reveals to the reader that he knows that Tim Drake is Robin. He, however, will not let Tim know that Bernard knows until Tim is ready to reveal that information. Bernard gives Tim a necklace with the letter B for their 1-year anniversary of having reconnected. That way, whether he is Robin or Tim, Bernard can be close to him. Bernard also reveals to Tim that he was Bernard's gay awakening. Tim says he always thought Bernard was super straight, a little laughing nod from the writer to the reader at how the original Robin ongoing series that introduced Bernard through Tim's POV might not have been fully accurate. The issue ends with a digestif, representing in the comic a post-meal drink to process everything that's gone down, with Mrs. Dowd messaging Bernard an apology and asking him to come home. The community's thoughts on issue 7. Jade's thoughts. Jade really liked the menu theme of this issue. It was interesting to see things through Bernard's eyes and realize that he totally knows Tim's secret identity. Do we think he knew back in issue 3 when he invited Robin into the houseboat? Joshy's thoughts. If Serg Acuna had been the artist on Tim Drake's Robin series from issue 1, the book would still be running to this day, I reckon. The artwork in this issue encapsulates everything I wanted conveyed through the artwork about Bernard and Tim's chemistry. I love that this issue is from Bernard's perspective, providing a nuanced view of not only his life growing up and the shadow that his parents leave over him, not dissimilar to Batman's over Tim's, and also highlights how important Tim is to Bernard and what Bernard sees and likes about Tim. From the artwork to the variant Serg Acuna cover that wasn't available to be ordered from any comic book store in Australia, so I had to order it in from America, to the writing of this comic, this issue from start to finish is my favorite issue of the entire run. Also, I wish I didn't relate to characters with boatloads of parental trauma so much. Bernard just being only thought of in terms of how he's affecting his parental units, not in terms of who he is as a person, by them is just devastating and relatable to so many people, I'm sure. The irony that his parents call him selfish whilst being selfish themselves, projection by them, much. Ammo's thoughts. Finally, some much needed character development for Bernard, even if it's a little tiresome. Haven't we told enough stories about gay teens with unsupportive parents? Ammo did like the reveal that Bernard has figured out Tim's secret identity, though. Also, why did both Robin and Bernard leave Bernard's parents behind in a still burning building, walk away and have a chat, before which Robin has conveniently had time to change out of his costume and back into his suit, even though the gag at the start of the issue is that Robin is very slow at changing, and then decide to go back to the restaurant and save them. Joshy's note. I believe Bernard and Tim leaving Tim's parents behind in the burning building was because of the disorienting influence of Phobia's powers, discombobulating their normal people-pleasing, overly helpful tendencies. Second, Joshy's note. Tales about unsupportive parents are unfortunately an evergreen, ever relevant goldmine, regardless of whether the protagonist is gay or not. And while the parents in this case are too conservative to be supportive of Bernard's sexuality, the bigger issues they had with Bernard were class-based and image-based ones, by Bernard wanting to pursue a working-class job of a chef and not by conforming to their controlling self-image. Laughing Seal's thoughts. Easily the standout issue for Seal, no contest. He loved the frame and device of the menu. Loved the dynamic of Bernard knowing Tim's identity, but wanting Tim to be ready. And Laughing Seal liked that they were going for what they were going for with the parents, but felt the writer didn't quite nail it for the Laughing Seal. It was really working for Laughing Seal right up until the dad started blaming Bernard and saying it was all about him. He knows it was meant to be showing he's a sharty dad who has the mentality of, but why isn't there a straight pride for the rest of us? But it was so cartoonishly out of place for in Laughing Seal's opinion that it was hard to suspend his Laughing Seal's disbelief again after that. He thought, my guy, your son is doing what he can to support the guy keeping you from being killed. Have a brain cell. Otherwise, fantastic issue. Joshy's note to the outlandishness of Bernard's father's actions. I think it can be chalked up to Phobia's influence, which would have started before Firefly even entered the building. But I'm also a super jaded person, different kind of jade from the one present at tonight's comic club, who is certain there are people willing to literally die on an anthill to make a point, especially if that point is all about them. Coastal thought. Coastal is a big fan of Serg Acuna's artwork. There are panels in the main variant cover that Coastal loves, but there are a couple panels where Coastal doesn't love how the eyes are drawn. A few of them are too wide in length when they are narrow and too circular when they are too wide in terms of both height and length, which makes the characters look too youthful. Coastal loves the little details in the art, like the fade to Tim's hair. Tim Drake Robin, 2022, issue 8. With issue 8, we have our final artist for the comic series, Nikola Cizmesija, him, doing the in-book art for issues 8 through 10. In 2025, Nikola has worked with Tim Seeley on IDW's Godzilla comic relaunch and is writing and drawing a web manga called Umbral Chains, a shonen action horror story about students at a monster hunting school, set to start publishing on Global Comics in mid-December 2025. He's also worked on Gotham War Red Hood, did a two-part story for the Batman and Robin comic, 2022 sort of Azrael one-shot and sequel miniseries, and has done variant covers for the current Transformers and Void Rivals series. He also contributed 16 different artworks to the Marvel Snap game. Robin and his companions, Bernard and Darcy, are having a heartfelt conversation when they are interrupted by the sudden and dramatic arrival of Batwoman. Bernard is quickly ushered away, while Tim and Darcy are left to tend to the ailing superhero. There is a lot of blood on her gloves. Once conscious and below deck, Kate admits she doesn't remember anything after coming home from helping Harley Quinn, a reference to events that happened in Harley Quinn 2021's issues 14 through 16, and goes to bed, events that happened a few months ago. Batwoman is surprised the Bat-Fam didn't look for her. Robin counters, stating she came over for Christmas dinner with Bruce, Dick, and Damien. She took Bernard and Tim out to celebrate their coming out with Batgirl, I assume the Stephanie Batgirl, given the silhouette. Kate even helped Tim move into the boat. Meanwhile, Tim is analysing Kate's gloves. The blood is not hers, but there is no match as to whose it is. Robin and Kate Kane are going to work together to solve what happened. The first step is to report it to the GCPD. Robin, Batwoman, and Sparrow stumble on a building under siege by Chaos Monsters last seen in the DC Pride Collector Stories The Sum of Our Parts. Far as I can tell, the Chaos Monsters have no actual powers, they're just ordinary people wearing garish masks. Detective Williams is there pinned down behind a car. The Chaos Cult was released after all the charges against them were dropped. The attack does not fit the modus operandi of Chaos Monster activity. There is no one leading this attack who could benefit from it. The three heroes are spurred to action. Their goal is to gain information while disarming the Chaos Monsters. Batwoman is overzealous in trying to discover what happened to her, acting more violent than Robin wants. Upon discovering the ringleader may be on the roof, Robin grapples up to confront them. Batwoman hot on his heels despite Robin protesting that those on the ground need backup more. Batwoman, single-minded in her drive to know what happened to her, ignores Robin's field commands. Sparrow, who is distracted by a co-worker's departure, takes a knife to the abdomen. Batwoman and Robin move forward without knowing the extent of Darcy's injuries. Batwoman grabs the roof man by his lapel, while Robin attempts to restrain her so she doesn't kill him. The man remarks to Robin that he was wondering when Robin would get his message. The man abruptly takes out Batwoman, forcing her arm behind her back and holding her neck, saying that Robin has helped them capture a child killer. Simultaneously, Detective Williams radios Robin. The detective is with Sparrow, and he doesn't believe she is going to make it. Issue 8 thoughts. Jade's thoughts. Okay, is it a bird? A plane? Fake out was excellent. A few twists going on this issue. Batwoman is missing memories. Sparrow may become an ex-Sparrow. The villain of the week was trying to get Robin's attention. And apparently Batwoman has done a child murder. Well, just another regular day in Gotham. Jade assumes we won't have a fridge situation next issue, but we'll see. Josh's thoughts. While Nikola Cizmesija also comes with a different hyper-stylized art style that isn't suited for the Bernard Tim emotional core the story is going for, unlike Rossmo or Ortiz, Nikola's art style does really suit the actiony superhero elements of the book. The movement lines, whether it be Batwoman falling on Tim's boat or fighting the Chaos Monsters, are bold and fierce and give a strong feeling of momentum and weight to everything. I also love the page design on screen currently of Tim's brain looking at all the parts of the boat requiring maintenance, which from the little I know of boats situated on the water is pretty accurate that they require constant maintenance to stay afloat, let alone in working order, but the different parts in panels shaped like puzzle pieces that fit together to make a whole working boat is great. I also love that the giant double page spread at the bottom showing the fight with all three superheroes in a group shot in the center of the page around the smaller background panels detailing some of the smaller blows striking Chaos Monster enemies. Laughman Seal's thoughts. Seal thought that this issue was a great setup. Also, Seal was internally screaming, "No, Sparrow!" Seal notes that he didn't read whatever story she originated out of, but really likes her and Tim's dynamic. Shame to see them go. Joshy's note. As aforementioned, Sparrow really hasn't existed in the main universe previously. They're apparently part of the We Are Robin movement, but I haven't seen them on panel when reading that series. And then they're in 2 issues of a non-canon timeline in the Future State Robin comics. Hammer's thoughts. Batwoman falling from the sky onto Robin's boat with her gloves covered in somebody else's blood and a month for memory missing is a compelling setup for a mystery story. Ammo was also genuinely upset to see Sparrow wounded, and of the many artists who have worked on this run, the artist for these next 3 issues is probably Ammo's favorite. Tim Drake Robin, 2022, issue 9. In the opening pages, we see Tim utilize his detective skills to assess and de-escalate the situation between him, Batwoman, and the mysterious man who is holding her forcefully, threatening to hurt her. The artwork by Nikola highlighting the clues and Tim's reasoning really well. The mystery man escapes but has a tracker placed on him by Tim. Knowing the Chaos Monsters are back, Batwoman and Robin go to interrogate Bernard, a survivor of the Chaos Monsters thanks to the events of the Sum of Our Parts story. Robin being careful not to be too familiar or comforting with Bernard to preserve his secret identity. There's a very cute bi-panic internal thought box about abs and arms that's detailing the physical attraction Tim has to Bernard. Bernard refuses to recall the terrible times that nearly led Bernard to end his life for the Chaos Monsters, a emotional hole that Tim Drake, his boyfriend, pulled him out of. Batwoman threatens to get physically violent with Bernard, and Tim defenestrates Batwoman out the window with the recoil impact of a bat grapple to the gut in order to put some distance between Kate and the civilian Bernard. Batwoman on the rooftop below takes her frustrations out on Tim with numerous punches, while he refuses to engage with her, knowing she's acting out of anger and fear. Tim is adamant about not re-traumatizing somebody who has already been through the cult's exposure of the Chaos Monsters. Kate says that romance with non-superheroes isn't in the cards for people like her or Tim. That Bernard is a dime a dozen, some below the belt dirty comments, though one's grounded realistically in a character who's had a lot of complicated relationships that have fallen apart for her, including with former roommate Sophie Moore, Metropolis police officer Maggie Sawyer, and former GCPD detective and currently one of the holders of the question mantle, Renee Montoya. Batwoman and Tim part ways, Batwoman vowing to get answers by herself, though thankfully doesn't double back to take on Bernard. A resident of the marina called Pie thinks Tim is cheating on Bernard with Robin thanks to a sloppy arrival at Tim's boat. Tim heads back out as Robin later checks in on Kate, finds a hole in her apartment window, and is ambushed and captured by the Chaos Monsters in a pretty wonderfully terrifying couple of pages. The glaring omission of this issue is outside of a single panel and 3 context boxes, Sparrow's gut stabbing and the outcome seems to be completely forgotten about by the writer, so Sparrow's fate is just left in limbo as Tim's spending hours going around the city and marina. Issue 9's thoughts. J'd thoughts, J'd realized at this point that Bernard's encounter with the Chaos Monsters happened during the DC Pride Tim Drake special, available in the DC Pride The New Generation. Also, Tim has the saddest frowny face. Josh's thoughts. Though some tense moments between Bernard's apartment, the adjoining rooftop, and in Kate's apartment, all elevated by the quality of the artwork, the fighting, especially any punches by Batwoman, all feel particularly brutal. I don't love how sloppy the writing makes Tim at preserving his secret identity in this issue. Like, I have to do some heavy lifting with headcanon to justify that Tim's distracted enough to not scope out pedestrians who might notice Tim entering his boat in Robin attire. Laughing Seal's thoughts. Sheer would love if Bernard eventually became like a bare-knuckle brawler type hero. But yeah, oof, he's having a rough time of it here. Also, Seal wondered, did any of us seriously believe that Kate would be a child killer? Like, really? Yeah, no. Ammo's thoughts. Batwoman and Robin's interrogation of Bernard was frustrating. Ammo thought this would have been a good moment for Robin to reveal his secret identity to Bernard, seeing as he couldn't truly provide Bernard comfort from behind his mask. Otherwise, Bernard and Tim both leave the scene without any sort of emotional growth, and the plot just kind of awkwardly barrels along. The scene with Pie on the boat was nice, though. The exploration of how the marina community operates and supports each other is one of the more engaging elements of this run. Quick Joshy thought, basically, that countered this was basically that the reveal of Tim revealing his secret identity to Bernard should come from a place when it's a quiet moment, not out of necessity that's driven by an outside force like Batwoman, but because Tim deeply, truly has accepted him, that, you know, that he has feelings for Bernard and wants to share that part of his life with Bernard without external pressures being applied, would be my personal ideal of how he'd like to see that navigated. Syntax really liked Bernard and Tim's interaction and appreciated they kept Bernard's trauma live. He just wishes it wasn't explained so plainly towards Robin. He seems very people-pleasery. Syntax would have preferred if Bernard was more neutral and nicer initially and prone to outbursts once pressed, not just angry from the outset. Tim Drake Robin, 2022, issue 10. After being captured, Tim finds himself in a dire situation. After being challenged by a powerful enemy, he is reunited with a dear friend, but in order to save their life, he must risk his own. Finally, Tim finds himself surrounded by an unexpected group. Family and belonging are the 2 central themes of the series' ending finale. Throughout the series, Tim has dealt with not only an array of villains, but his own sense of purpose. In the final act, Tim gains both self-awareness and understanding regarding the community of people surrounding him. Robin wakes up in a dark and lonely room. The last thing he remembers, he was looking for the Kate Kane Batwoman and attacked by the Chaos Monsters. Robin soon realizes he is in a maze filled with traps, and Batwoman is likely there too. At Gotham Marina, Bernard Dowd is faced with his own mystery. The disappearance of Tim, right as Bernard is already struggling with telling Tim that he knows about Tim being Robin. He's interrupted by Pie, a fellow resident of the marina, who informs Bernard of Tim and Robin's shirtless shower time. Upon Pie mentioning that Chaos Monsters were spotted by marina residents the previous night, Bernard talks to other marina residents, Louie, Lauren, and her girlfriend, as well as Tuna. All the marina residents and Bernard are now worried about the absent Tim. Navigating the maze, an apparition of Jack Drake appears, and Tim, knowing Jack isn't real, can't resist trying to hug his dead dad. When one has a deceased parent, the thought of what one would do if they had 5 more minutes or 1 more opportunity for a conversation, it's a potent thought. The man impersonating Jack shoves Robin aside, allowing Robin to realize that a hallucinogenic mask combined with the gas is making him see things that aren't real. The Chaos Leader then makes one more offer for Robin to join them, revealing that he has Batwoman on an altar to be sacrificed for her crimes. In a flashback, we learn Batwoman found the Chaos monsters recovering from their last encounter with Robin. She found the leader's son and dragged him out of the cult. The boy, unable to handle life away from the chaos, unalived himself. Prior to the events of issue 8, Batwoman escaped the labyrinth that Robin is currently in. Robin, knowing the Chaos Monsters are a cult, plays along and takes on the crimes of Batwoman, placing himself as the savior of Batwoman. Bernard goes to Darcy's bedside where she is recovering from her injuries and reaches out to a number of Tim's Bat friends before finally Bernard finds Batman. Bernard telling Batman that Tim needs help to do whatever it takes. Robin is still drugged and Batwoman lies unconscious on the altar, making their survival unlikely. Robin is surrounded, outnumbered, and weakened. He knows he needs help, while the cult leader reads culty words out of a book. All hope seems lost. And then the wall smashes in. Bernard, along with the residents of the marina, Detective Williams, and the Bat family, comprised of Batman, Damian's Robin, Dick's Nightwing, and all three Batgirls, leap into action to save Robin. This moment genuinely made me tear up the first time I read it. Variations of this have happened a couple times. The most powerful previous example I recall happening in Batman War Games, which thanks to Fitzmartin's podcast, I know she's read, and almost certainly is homaging here in this moment. Tim Drake is the member of the Bat family that when the Bat fam hears that he's in trouble, everybody drops what they're doing to rally behind and support him without Tim ever asking. They're just there, and nobody is there faster than Batman himself. When the most independent loner who swears he doesn't need anybody but has the largest found family in the DC universe will not just dedicate himself to helping you when you're in trouble, but will actively pull every available resource he has to ensure that you're okay. That's a sign that you're a pretty special, unique person to elicit that kind of love and loyalty whole scale, and it's never done from a place of disappointment or anger on Batman's behalf. Tim's proved himself countless times to Batman as Tim Drake, as Red Robin, and as Robin, and has selflessly helped all the Bat family members at various points. It's done from a place of caring and love. When moments like this happen, it's not just showing how Tim Drake is the best through the actions of others, it's also showing Batman at his best. Add to that in a short time, Tim has elicited such fierce loyalty from his found Marina family too. As the fight between Tim's found family and the Chaos cult rages on, Bernard immediately runs into Robin's arms. This show of love from his whole found family galvanizes Tim Drake with a renewed vigor. Tim retains his own agency within his book, participating in the fight before pursuing the cult leader, who stealthily sneaks out of the fight, taking him down with batarangs. Robin leaves the man for the police, and the Chaos threat is over. Meghan Fitzmartin has talked in interviews about loving found family storylines about ragtag groups of individuals who are messy, unique, and just doing their best to find their own way. The comic ends with a renewed sense of self for Tim Drake. It's okay to be different, it's okay to still be working things out, but he doesn't need to make his way through the world alone. He isn't alone, he's accepted, and he's surrounded by love in all its various forms. And you are too. Laughing Seal's thoughts. Seal feels like there was a bit of crucial info missing by the end of that really annoyed him. So are we going to explain how Kate fell from the sky? On the other hand, he loved Bernard galvanizing everyone to find him, even if it did lead to the Bat family story trope of, hey, you forgot you could ask for support from your family, which Seal felt like was a lesson Tim didn't need to learn. Overall, this issue felt very anticlimactic to Seal. Joshy's counterpoint on the family support lesson. There are lessons in life that we need reminders of constantly. I know for myself, learning and relearning, that I have people who care about me, whether it's family or friends, has been an ongoing cycle, especially as people get wrapped up more and more in their own lives, and you don't want to be a bother, because of course people are busy, and you wouldn't want to interrupt. But please, if something's wrong with my nearest and dearest, I wish they'd speak up and let me know so I can help. I can only imagine that becomes more heightened when your nearest and dearest includes Batman, who's star of 10 different plotlines a month, Nightwing, who at the time was trying to launch the Alfred Pennyworth Foundation as a civilian, while dealing with a new sibling and trying to clean up Bloodhaven, and the Batgirls, who at the time are in hiding from a cyber hacker. It can probably feel like asking for help with the mundane civilian part of your life, as opposed to the glamorous superhero part, is comparatively a waste of their time. But it's not. And sometimes you just need that reminder. Ammo's thoughts. The mystery of Batwoman and Chaos Monsters comes to an unfortunately rushed conclusion. Bernard finally gets a chance to shine in this issue, though, by rallying the troops and even tracking down Batman himself, and ultimately coming to Robin's rescue. Also, Ammo found himself wishing they had some prior knowledge of Tim's backstory going into this comic, because the stuff with Tim's dad did not really hit for Ammo. Jade's thoughts. Jade was delighted that Bernard saved the day. Jade assumes every bat knows now that Bernard knows now. Joshy's note. I can confirm, having read Batman 2025 issue 3 by Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez, that the Bat fam absolutely don't think Bernard knows anything. Bernard even has a whole convo with Bruce where that is made quite clear. Laugh and Seal's overall thoughts. Seal feels like this was a by the numbers run, but greatly enjoyed it. The highlight for Laugh and Seal was Tim's relationship with Bernard and seeing Bernard take more of an active role in events in the second half of the series. He felt the art and writing was strongest in issue 7, whereas the surrounding issues felt like the comic was going through conventional comic motions. Favorite panel? Seal's favorite panel was Tim being savage and immediately going, right, let's kill the one that we know has most famously died before. That got a good chuckle from Seal. Favorite cover? Seal knows he's playing right into gay stereotypes, but sometimes a gay guy has just got to fall for the thirst trap cover of a queer hero. Ammo's thoughts. Ammo hates to admit it, but this was not one of their favourite comics to be covered this year. Ammo struggled to get invested in the relationship between Tim and Bernard, and also didn't find either of the two mystery stories, the serial killer or the Batwoman one, to be very compelling or satisfying. A good mystery story needs not just a victim and a bunch of clues, but also a pool of potential suspects, each with different motives to commit the crime, so that readers have someone to pin their theories to, and Fitzmartin didn't really deliver on that front. Ammo didn't gel with the art style of the first 6 issues either. They found the fight scenes to be hard to follow, finding the fight where Moriarty is changing between different identities especially to be a bit of a mess. Ammo could see how those artists would be great in comics that better suit their art style. The change to another artist for the remaining issues was a relief for Ammo. That's not to say that Ammo didn't find anything worth praising in this run. The inclusion of the various members of the Bat family was fun, and the setting of the Gotham Arena, as well as the diverse community of people who live there, was interesting to explore. Ammo also appreciates the focus on a same-sex relationship. It's nice to see that DC Universe remains unapologetically queer and inclusive. Their favorite secondary character, was Sparrow. Their favorite panel was Bernard and the Marina folk leading the charge into danger, with the Bat fam bringing up the rear as both a fun inversion of the reader's expectations and also a much-needed chance for Bernard to shine. Ammo's favourite cover. There's a lot of great covers to choose from, but this variant cover for issue 5 by Junie Barr really caught Ammo's eye. Ammo liked the extremely limited use of colour and also the contrast between the very simple line work for Robin's cape and the very detailed statue quite striking. The runner-up is the variant for issue 3 by Rion Gonzalez, which really made Ammo smile. It's so charming. Robin is fishing. Look at the chunky cat. And Bernard is so small. Jade's thoughts. Jade's favorite panels. Jade really liked this moment of detective reflection in the middle of a really stressful situation, showing off how Tim's brain works. Honorable mentions to 1, the panel where Bat-Bro normal sibling relationship is implied, and 2, this neat swing. Dishonorable mention to the top right panel of the slide with the underwhelming Sonic the Hedgehog spin jump impression. Jade's favorite character, Bernard. Jade went from meh to looking forward to seeing what's going on with this character next. Jade's overall thoughts. Tim is not Jade's fave character to follow. Sacre bleu! And this wasn't Jade's fave series, but Jade overall enjoyed the overall journey, focusing on who Tim is as a person and his relationships with people. The villains are secondary and are just excuses to get protagonists to interact. Jade might be able to vaguely describe the various Brat Bros now, but oh my god, don't test this theory live, please. Because Jishi forewarned everyone about the art in the early issues, Jade was actually fine with most of the art, except for that unfortunate issue that flipped back and forth between 2 artists. There was probably some behind-the-scenes drama explaining this choice. Jade rates these 10 issues overall 3.5 of the saddest frowny faces that need to be turned upside down out of 5. General discussion. Joshy's thoughts. Imperfections and all, I do adore large aspects of this series. Lee Lowbridge, the colorist, does a consistently great job across all 10 issues. I never particularly cared about the mysteries themselves, though the Batwoman one intrigued me more, but Tim's inner dialogue and his dynamic with Bernard had me gripped every month as these issues came out. Joshy's favorite character is obviously Tim Drake. I grew up reading Tim Drake comics. As a character, I've always felt a kinship with this nerdy but lovable character and have wanted to aspire to be the kind of person that others might feel they want to rally around. In this new era of bisexual Tim Drake, it feels like a natural extension of the pre-52 era of Tim Drake. that started in the 90s and ran through most of the 2000s. Just new facets being explored. Tim's bisexual awakening in the stories collected in DC Pride 2022, being part of a catalyst for me in my own personal life as well. I also relate to all of the self-doubt that Tim experiences, and some aspects of Bernard's parenting issues were all too relatable. Meghan Fitzmartin and Serg Acuna's issue 7. That is a 10 out of 10 issue for me. It's one of my all-time favorite comic issues on a number of fronts. I'd probably rate issues 8 and 9 about a 7.5 and issue 10 a 9. Points deducted for being rushed, but that would have been determined by low sales requiring a quick wrap-up. Fitzmartin said in interviews that she would write stories for Tim until the end of time if DC let her, so it certainly wasn't her choice to conclude the series prematurely. The first 6 issues, I enjoyed Tim's internal thoughts and the dialogue. The incorrectly allocated artists do mean the issues suffer, especially coming off of Belen Ortega's phenomenal work in the DC Pride Tim Drake special stories, which hurts because I so badly want peak bisexual Tim Drake with Bernard content. I really hope long-term Bernard is kept a civilian. Nothing annoys me more than when they shrink a main protagonist's world down by making everybody a superhero, a supervillain, or a member of the police/fire/medical profession. Overall, a flawed series of 10 issues, but with some highlights among the issues that I truly will adore for decades to come, and I'll forever be personally grateful for Meghan Fitzmartin's DC Pride Tim Drake special stories that kicked off this whole run on a personal level. If you liked this book, or even the characters in it, you'll love February 2026, when we're going to be covering select issues of 2004's Batman War Games, focusing on the Tim Drake and Stephanie Brown specific issues. There's a Robin compendium that's available off Amazon and at all good bookstores for 80-ish Aussie dollars, collecting 30-ish issues from the 90s ongoing series. There's also a Teen Titans by Jeff Johns compendium for similar pricing and a similar number of issues coming out next year, reprinting the early 2000s run of Teen Titans, which starred Tim Drake as the representative Robin. After this run, Tim was largely left to flounder out of the limelight, popping up in occasional DC Pride anthologies in 2025 for only a single panel, as well as a rough handful of Chip Zdarsky Batman issues. Now, the current 2025 Batman run by Matt Fraction of Hawkeye fame has Tim as a main supporting character in issues 2 and 3, with a multi-page interaction between Bernard and Bruce in issue 3 of that 2025 Batman run. In DC's Lex of the City one-shot anthology, one of the stories is To Live and Date in Gotham by Brendan Hay and Stephen Byrne, with Damian going to Tim and Bernard for dating advice. This is because of Damian being romantically interested in Nakia, also known as Flatline, a villain who Damian met in an assassination tournament, who at the end of the two's first meeting tore Damian's heart out of his chest literally. Flatline also resurrected Damian's dead evil grandfather, Ra's al Ghul. And yes, that Lex of the City crossover is an homage to Sarah Jessica Parker's iconic show intro. If you want light-hearted Bat Family fare that's very slice of life a la Giant Days, then Wayne Family Adventures is my recommendation. Has all the main Robins, has Duke Thomas, Bernard, and the 3 most important Batgirls, and you see snippets of their life when they aren't crime fighting, like Tim figuring out whether Bernard wants to hold his hand. Spoiler alert, the lesson is that communication and listening are key to progressing a relationship. There's Robins trying to cook Thanksgiving in Alfred's kitchen whilst Alfred's not home, and other shenanigans. Can be purchased as physical volumes, is available for free on the Webtoons website and app, and is slowly being uploaded and released through the DC Infinite app, which can be accessed with a free sign-up account. What's Josh been reading this month besides the Comic Club book? Detective Comics by Tom Taylor. Syntax and I met Tom Taylor at a Queensland Comic Con. While we were queued to see Tom, I played catch-up on my back catalogue of Detective Comics, finishing an arc where the Penguin and Batman had to team up in Russia to save Harvey Bullock. I read Detective Comics issue 1100, which had a story about Batman locating a boy's lost dog, which had 0 dialogue, not dissimilar to when Taylor's Nightwing run had a dog-centric issue. Taylor enjoyed taking something you'd imagine Nightwing doing, and then putting Batman on the task instead, and then entertainment is derived from the similarities and differences in how things unfold. I'm also partway through issue 1101 of Detective Comics, which has kicked off a mystery involving 41 dead people on a boat. I also saw Charles Soule at this Comic-Con, and I read Lucky Devil issue 1 by Soule, which is about 2 fundamentally decent people who begin working with the devils on their shoulders in an attempt to improve their crummy lives. I read Boom's The Last Boy by Dan Panosian. It's a Peter Pan story set years after his adventures with Wendy Darling. Everybody in Neverland has grown up, including the Lost Boys, who have all retired from adventuring as they have families now. Peter Pan, the last one, still clinging to his adventurous youth. Meanwhile, in London, Wendy also yearns for childhood and his freedom from responsibility as she rails against the transition to adulthood and her family's expectations. An aging Captain Hook has matured and brokered a peaceful trade agreement with the natives of the land and has been engaged in honest good work that will benefit all as a trade supplier, but immature Peter can't understand that people can change and aggressively start starts a fight with Captain Hook, making him walk the plank unarmed, allowing Hook to be swallowed by the crocodile, killing Hook. Peter can't comprehend that Hook is actually dead and thinks it must surely be a trick and the Captain Hook will spring up somewhere, and so continues traveling around Neverland searching for Captain Hook to engage in combat again. And Peter's own shadow threatens to destroy all of Neverland. It's a fascinating breakdown and hyper-realistic twist of how the passage of time would affect that Neverland world. I also read Emma Frost the White Queen, a 2025 series looking back at Emma's days as a villainous member of the Hellfire Club, looking to do anything to stay on top, set just after the events of the Dark Phoenix saga. I finished reading Marvel's Imperial, a multi-way war between the Shi'ar Empire, the Skrulls, the Kree, the Intergalactic Empire of Wakanda, and one of the two last members of the Nova Corps. I also read the first issue of Tin Can Society, a 9-issue miniseries by Peter Warren and Francesco Mobili. It's about a world-famous tech mogul, known as much for his work pioneering mobility aids for people with disabilities, like himself, who also moonlights as the metal-suited vigilante Caliburn. Johnny is found brutally murdered and his suit stolen, resulting in his estranged childhood best friends reuniting to solve the mystery of his murder. A fascinating story peppering flashbacks to childhood with the modern day, as your drip-fed information as to why this group of friends have drifted apart. In books, I concluded reading Marcus Shiro's Into the Light, which was a great read, but also deeply traumatizing exploration of the effects that religion and cults have and their impacts on the American fostering system. And I also started reading a collaboration with that Marcus Shiro did with Rick Riordan that's tied into the Percy Jackson universe called Court of the Dead. I'm still in very early stages of reading that book.